Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bridwell Institute for Economic Freedom's inaugural event in the new Cox School of David E. Miller Quadrangle at the Cox School of Business. Every one of those words cost Mr. Miller $10 million, I think. It's a pleasure to have you all here tonight for our Flourishing in Society event. My name is Robert Lawson. I'm the director of the Bridwell Institute. Normally I give a bit of a spiel about the Bridwell Institute, but in the audience there are some annual reports which I invite you to pick up. If you didn't get one, we'll make sure that we just send us an email. We'll get you one. There we go. It's all new room, so none of us know how anything works. Hopefully you got a book on the way in, and if you didn't, I'm sure someone in the audience, we believe in free trade here, so someone in the audience might be willing to sell you theirs. I have two up here, and we'll have an auction after the event. I'm going to do a very quick introduction of our speaker and our moderator for the evening. Our speaker needs no introduction. Someone who starts as a hitchhiking hippie on the streets of Austin and ends up creating one of the coolest companies in the world. And we're very happy to have John here again. He is a dropout of two great institutions, Trinity University and a little school in Austin that you've heard of. Our moderator tonight is my good friend Gonzalo Schwartz. Gonzalo is a graduate of the Catholic University in Bolivia and has a master's degree in economics from George Mason University. He is currently the president and CEO of a very cool new startup think tank called the Archbridge Institute. And if you don't know them, I'm sure it's archbridge.org or something like that. Google will find it. And they are doing really good work on human flourishing and economic development, entrepreneurship, social mobility, and a lot of really interesting work. It's not your grandpa's think tank. And I'm very happy that Gonzalo was with us today. And I'm going to let Gonzalo take away the program from here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Bob, and it's an honor and pleasure to be here and pleasure to be sharing the stage with you, John, who I think you're one of the most inspiring, purpose-driven entrepreneurs that this country has. I think the book that you all got is an amazing read. I read it last year, wrote a review of it because I really, really enjoyed it and wanted to thank you before for putting a lot of your heart and soul into it. You might think that we're here, or we'll go through some of the themes in the book, but there was a lot of personal stories, a lot of very authentic times in your life and in the business that you poured into it. So I think it's very valuable for people to see all that aspect from your personal life and the business life. I really encourage everyone to go and read the book. Hopefully we won't summarize it too much so they have an incentive to.
It's 400 pages long, so.
It's worth it. It's very much worth it.
It's really not the whole story any longer because the publisher cut 100 pages out of it. So,
so there's going to be a sequel after. Yeah, there you go. Well, we'll start from the beginning. How does as Bob mentioned, a free-spirited hitchhiker in Austin transforms into a pioneering natural foods entrepreneur? What are the first steps of Whole Foods?
it's always interesting to say, where do you start the story, right? And like everyone else, we're products of our time and era. And I'm a baby boomer in the middle of the baby boom, and that's coming out of the parents that grew up out of the Depression and World War II, and then you had the big post-World War II economic boom that created a generation of young people that weren't as concerned about economic prosperity so much as they were concerned about the problems they saw in the world and the idealism that went along with that. And I was definitely that kind of person. So I think I got started there because I was a student. I think, as Bob said, I was a student at both Trinity and the University of Texas. I went back and forth between those universities three times at Trinity, 3 times at UT. I have 120 hours of electives. No degree, but close to a 4.0. I really just took classes I was interested in subjects I was interested. That didn't happen to be business. I took no business classes at all, which proved to be both a curse and a blessing when I started a business. because I didn't know how I was supposed to do it, so I was free to innovate. On the other hand, we reinvented the wheel multiple times. But it really got started for me when honestly, I just, I talk about it in the book. If you read the book, the very prologue of the book, I'm 22 years old, and I just had an experience that changed my life. Didn't know how large this dose was, but I took a very large dose of LSD, and I experienced ego death, where I merged back into the one, into the universe. And when I came down from that, my life was changed, because I really wasn't afraid any longer. I realized that the essence of what we are is immortal. And soon after that, I moved into this vegetarian co-op. And not because I was not a vegetarian, I just was really interested in all things counterculture. And to be honest, I thought I'd meet some really interesting people in a vegetarian co-op, in a commune really is what it was. And particularly I thought I'd meet some interesting women, which I did meet. I met the co-founder of Whole Foods, Renee Lawson. When I met Renee, I was just about 23 and she was 19. And I became a vegetarian. This was when my food awakening occurred. I got into that co-op and I was like, whoa. I had just thought food was like, I was like a car, and I'd go into the gas station, Jack in the Box or McDonald's, and fuel up, and then drive out of there and get on the day. I just saw food as fuel. And there I began to learn about food, and food was actually nourishment. That what we ate had this amazing effect on our body, on our longevity and our overall vitality and health. And then I was on fire about it. Then I started devouring books. I learned how to cook. I became the food buyer for the co-op. Then I went to work for a small natural food store called the Good Food Company. And I remember I loved it. I had all these friends I was working with. I loved the customers. I loved it. And I remember coming back to the co-op one evening after a really satisfying day of work, and I took Renee's hands, I looked her in the eyes, and I said, Renee, what do you think if we opened up our own natural food store? And Renee, she was a hippie. She looked me in the eyes and she said, oh, Mackey man, that'd be cool. Let's do it. And so we did. And so that's how we got started. And that's how the whole journey begins.
Oh, excellent. As you can see, the whole story, all unfiltered. That's amazing. I wrote a review. When I read the review of the book, I called it The Whole Story of the American Dream, because even though I think you didn't mention the American Dream in the book, I think that your story represents that full experience of what it means to pursue the American dream, of living a better, richer, and fuller life. And in many cases, living the dream is living your hero's journey. Would you say that starting Whole Foods was your American dream, or getting people to eat healthier?
Absolutely, of course it was. I didn't think about it that way. I think it was a hero's journey. I think most people are called to a hero's journey, but most people don't answer the call because it's scary. And remember, I'd had that incredible experience. It made a shift in my consciousness, and so I really wasn't afraid. I thought, life's an adventure. Life is an adventure. Let's go on an adventure. And starting a business if there's a better adventure than building a company, I have not found it. It is so fun. I try to communicate how much fun it is building a business, and you're doing it with people you love and care about, and you're learning and you're growing. So yes, it's the American dream is pursuing something you really care about and you're passionate about, and then becoming successful. The American dream. That's why millions of people keep coming over to America from all over around the world, because the American dream is alive and well. Can I illustrate the American dream by telling you a story? So this was about, a decade or so ago, and I was doing a paid speech in Chicago, and they, providing a limo service, they picked me up at baggage claim. And the guy that picked me up had a funny accent. I couldn't quite place it. And so I said, so where are you from originally? And he said, I'm from Bhutan. I thought, well, what do I know about Bhutan? Oh yeah, that's the place where people are supposed to be really happy. And I said, oh yes, Bhutan, that's where, you're like the happiest place in the world, right? And he says, oh yes, we're very happy in Bhutan. So I'm walking along with him, and I start thinking, well, if you're so happy in Bhutan, how come you're in America? and that's what I asked him. I said, well, then why did you leave Bhutan if it's the happiest place in the world? He says, happiness overrated. and I said, I tried to say, what do you mean exactly by that? And he looks at me and he says, my daughter, she's in medical school. My daughter, she's going to be a doctor. She could not be a doctor in Bhutan. That's the American dream, right there.
Yeah.
It's alive and well because, in fact, here's part of the American dream. In one generation, do you know from an ethnicity background, what the wealthiest household income ethnicity is in America today? It's not even close. Anybody want to take a guess? They're up there, Indian Americans. In one generation are now the wealthiest household income in America. And the Taiwanese are next. So the people that founded the country, the British, I'm Scots, Irish, British, a little bit of French and German, a little bit of Neanderthal. I'm most proud of that, actually. And we slipped down the totem pole because the American dream is alive and well. If you work hard and save your money and get a good education, invest in your children, you advance in America. It's still largely a meritocracy, and that's why people keep coming over here. I love the American dream. It's amazing, and I wish the rest of the world would emulate it.
Yeah, I very much agree. And it's also about persisting in overcoming barriers and challenges that are always there. And that's where I think in the book as well, you share a lot of the challenges that you faced. And I wanted you maybe to tell the story of one of the darkest moments of Whole Foods where at the beginning where you're picking up steam and you nearly lost everything in a 100-year flood in Austin. And how did that experience shape you, or how did that experience shape your understanding of the importance of community and other stakeholders?
Yeah, so continuing that story, so Renee and I started a small store called Saferway. And get it? Safeway, Safer Way. Oh, we thought it was a great name. And it was in an old Victorian house. And on a non-commercial block. We just thought this would be a cool place to do a store. It was a terrible location because it didn't, had no traffic. And we should have failed right there, then and there. We moved out of the co-op. We lived there. It wasn't zoned to people for living there. And Renee and I lived on the third floor. There was no shower or bathtub in that. So we actually took showers in the Hobart dishwasher. And I'm pretty sure that was against health code, even back in a very liberal Austin. So anyway, after a couple of years, we scratched out. We lost half our capital in the first year, made a small profit in year two, and I thought, man, then I was reading business books, being a grocer in the day and just devouring business books at night. I've read hundreds and hundreds of business books, and I was passionate about once you really are interested in something, you learn things very quickly because you just want to absorb the information. So I began to learn about things like competitive advantage, and I realized my safer way is that we have no competitive advantages at all. We're too small. We're on a bad street. It's expensive rent in this Victorian house. We got to get a new location. We have to have a bigger store. So skipping ahead, because I had a lot of trouble persuading any investors to do that, but that's a good story in and of itself. We find a location. We open it up on Lamar, 10th and Lamar in Austin, and within 6 months of opening, it had become the highest volume natural food store in the entire United States. It was a phenomenal success. People ask me, how long did that first Whole Foods market take to become profitable? And I said, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the first day. We were doing so much more business than we thought. So, I don't know how, there's two emotions that all entrepreneurs feel. If those of you that are entrepreneurs will know exactly what I'm talking about. You feel a gamut of emotions, but two stand out. One is absolute and complete terror. that it's not going to work. You're going to fail. And all the people that have invested in you are going to let them down. It's going to be embarrassing. There's going to be shame there. But the other emotion is ecstasy. It works. It's going to be successful. And that's what we were feeling with that first Whole Foods market. And then Austin had 100-year, had the worst flood they'd had in 70 years, Memorial Day 1981. We built it in the 100-year flood zone. I remember talking to the landlord. He said, you know, John, this is in the 100-year flood zone. I said, what the heck does that even mean? He said, well, it means about once every 100 years, you're going to have 8 feet of water in your store. I thought, well, that won't be good, but when was the last time that happened? He said, oh, it was before I was born. It was like over 70 years ago. And I thought, well, those are good odds. It happened in our very first year. And so we were out of business, really. And so the reason this is such a good story and why I'm telling it in some detail is because that changed everything. That was the best thing that ever happened to Whole Foods Market. Because we should have died. We had the near-death experience. And what happened the next day, I showed up for work, and I see our team members are helping clean up the store, but all these other people were helping us clean up the store, and they didn't work for us. It was our customers. It was our neighbors. And I would talk to them, and I'd say, why are you doing this? And they said, we love Whole Foods Market. You guys can't die. We're going to help you get back on your feet. The team members worked for free for the first 30 days because we didn't have any money to pay them. And once we got back open again, it took us 30 days to get reopened. We were able to sell some inventory and reopen. Suppliers gave us new inventory, although we hadn't paid them for our last inventory. Investors put in more capital. The bank loaned us more money on my signature, which I promise you was less than worthless. And so we recovered, we revived. I didn't have the language for stakeholders back then, but that's what they were. The stakeholders are the people that care about the business and invest in the business. And that's when I first began to realize also that business is not a win-lose game. It's a win-win game. Win-win-win. Good for the customers who voluntarily exchange for the business. If they didn't like it, hey, there's an H-E-B down the street, down every street in Austin, seemingly, and you can go there, or you can go to Safeway or Randall's or somebody else. If you don't like the job, you can get a better job. And actually, people quit at Whole Foods every day and get better jobs. So they're the ones that are working there are doing it because they want to. Suppliers don't have to trade with you. If you're a horrible person or don't pay your bills, then they'll cut you off. They're doing it for their own mutual gain. Say with the investors. When Whole Foods was a public company for 25 years, if you didn't like the company, you could sell the stock, or you could buy the stock if you did like it, and the communities that you're part of. So I realized this is a win-win-win game. We're creating value for all of these stakeholders. And then as I got deeper into the philosophy, I began to realize, actually, this is a good way to live your entire life, thinking win-win-win with everybody you kind of interact with. Why just do it in business? We should do it everywhere. And also, that business is creating more value because of all of these interdependent stakeholders than all the governments and all the nonprofits combined. Business is extraordinary. And this capitalism is lifting humanity out of the dirt. It's an extraordinary story. And I began to realize that because of the flood. And the flood changed everything. And in some ways, it brought us all together. It was the bonding that occurred because we overcame that struggle was amazing. And I've sort of felt like I've been paying back the stakeholders ever since because we should have died. They just wouldn't let it happen.
Yeah, amazing story. And one of the times I think that you tried to make this win-win-win work, and maybe it was a bit more challenging, is another episode that I want you to maybe go into because it relates to one of my favorite lines in the book that really was eye-opening. I'll try to go slow in quoting it so I don't miss anything. You said, in engaging the world as it could be, it is easy to lose touch with the world as it is and therefore fail to actually improve it. And you said this while you were discussing improving animal welfare standards when you wanted to do right by everyone.
Yeah.
But I think it can just be applied more broadly to many instances in life. Can you share more about that experience and what lessons you learned from that episode?
Well, the anti-capitalist, the critics of business, they always compare business to some utopian model they have in their brains, the way the things should be. It's very easy to be a critic. It's very hard to create things that the market actually wants. And so I always say, you have to meet the market where you find it. And you can try to educate the market. You can try to help it want things that are better for it. But if you get too far ahead of the market, you're going to fail because your competitors are going to satisfy the market. And so one of the things that I learned at Whole Foods is we were always a mission-driven business. Renee and I started the business, we wanted to sell healthy food to people. B, wanted to earn a living. And C, wanted to have a lot of fun doing it. All three of those are still alive at Whole Foods. And that purpose was always there, but again, people vote with their pocketbooks. They come in and I'll tell you right now, organic potato chips are not a healthy food, even though they're organic. Potatoes are a healthy food, but once you take them out, super process them, fry them up in oil that's been used over and over and over again, it's not really that healthy for you. And then put a lot of salt on it. That's not really good for it either. Maybe put some other stuff on it, some other chemicals, some preservatives, some additives, and pretty soon, it's not really healthy food any longer. But again, that's what people want. You kind of have to meet them where you find it. And that's what people don't understand. They don't understand that capitalism satisfies the market. You can try to change that market and try to evolve that market. But if you ignore it, you're going to fail. That's a very important lesson. And it was a painful lesson, but I can tell you a story that'll encapsulate that lesson. So I forgot to mention that Saferway was a vegetarian store. Renee and I were vegetarians. Of course, we opened up a vegetarian store. We didn't sell any sugar. We didn't sell any alcohol. We didn't sell any coffee. We didn't do any business. When we opened up the first Whole Foods market, we sold meat and seafood. It was a higher welfare, more natural product, but definitely still it wasn't vegetarian. We sold beer and wine. We sold sugar, products that had sugar in it. Sold ice cream, things that, and within 6 months, Whole Foods was the highest volume natural food store in the entire United States. Some people could say, "Why, he sold out." It's like, hello. If you think you can do something different and better, do it. Do it. I don't want to hear your criticisms. Go out and create something. It's hard to create something. It's hard to actually go create value in the world. It's easy to find fault with others. So that's a long story about the meaning of that quote.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And take us through your thought process of later on, maybe fast forwarding too much, the process of selling to Amazon, the business later. How this idea came about? Was it a hard decision to make? Did you regret it eventually or not? Or
that's a long story in the book. It's obviously towards the end of the book, but most people don't because they don't know the story behind it. I didn't want to sell the company to Amazon. I was happy to keep doing what we're doing, but Whole Foods became under attack from very well organized shareholder activists. And Jana Partners, but there was more to it. There was a whole conspiracy around it. It was very well planned out. I only hint at the conspiracy because I can't prove it, but there was definitely a conspiracy to take the company over, take me out, get rid of our board. So the people at Jana Partners, they got an 8.8%. They launched their attack the day of my book release on the Whole Foods diet. Guess where I was supposed to do my very first book talk? Goldman Sachs. Interesting. So I get off the jet in New York, and my phone blows up because I've got like 100 texts, we got an emergency board meeting, call all my executives, blah, 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 because we're under attack. I'm supposed to go on national television the next morning on the Today Show to pitch my book. It's going to be great publicity. Yeah, they didn't want me to go on national television because all the people were going to ask me about was not about eating a healthy diet. They're going to be asking me about Jana Partners. So then, but I had my commitment to Goldman Sachs, so I go over there I'm thinking to myself, why the heck did Goldman Sachs want to invite me to go talk to their employees about my book? I was starting to think that was kind of weird. So I'm sitting there before I go on, and then the president And soon after that, CEO of Goldman Sachs, David Solomon, comes up to me, and he says, John, I know you're in shock. I know you're in shock. But I want you to know, Goldman's here for you. We can help defend you against these shareholder activists. And I'm thinking, this is a funny coincidence. This date that my book is being launched, I'm going to Goldman Sachs first. This may not surprise you. We did not hire Goldman Sachs. That was not a good strategy on their part. But anyway, Jana Partners, we meet with Jana Partners. They come in, they come to Austin. They want us, of course, to meet in New York. I said, you want to talk to us, come to Austin. So they come into, and they show us this PowerPoint presentation, which just trashes Whole Foods. Most of it was not even true stuff they were doing. This is what they were showing the investors in Wall Street. And so they finished that, and I say, listen, I'd really like to have a copy of that PowerPoint because I really like to respond to some of it because I think some of the stuff you're doing, it really needs sort of updating, being corrected. He says, no, you can't have it. And so why not? He says, because we don't want to. We don't want to give it to you. And he said, listen, Mackey, here's how it's going to go down. First, we're going to take over your board. After we take over the board, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fire you. And then we're going to fire any of your other executives who don't do exactly what we tell them to do. And there's not an effing thing you can do about it. Walked out the door. They walked out, and I thought, well, that went very well. So we were under the gun. The shareholder activists were going to try to take us over. So we looked at, we only had a few alternatives. A, fight. But what Whole Foods needed to do at that time, we needed to drop our prices. The whole paycheck narrative had gotten really terrible, and our competitors were now picking up our products, duplicating our private label, and undercutting us on price. But if you're trying to sell something for $1 and you start to sell it for 90 cents, in the short run, your sales go down 10%. Your profits go down further. And that's the right long-term decision to make, only you need time to execute that. And when you have shareholder activists, we didn't have time to execute it. So how long could we hold them off? So then the other thing was maybe we could sell the company to somebody friendly. So like we contacted Warren Buffett. Warren, always with a great sense of humor, he said, John, I own Dairy Queen. Whole Foods doesn't fit into my brand. Warren's famous for eating kind of a junk food diet. And so I just think he thought the company was overvalued probably, but he had a good sense of humor about it. And so then we met with like Albertsons to see if maybe, because they contacted us to meet. So I met with them and I realized, oh my God, there's no way we cannot merge with these guys. It'd be a disaster. So we're just looking at we had people that really wanted to take the company private. And that's where I think the conspiracy comes in. I hint at it in the book, but don't actually accuse anybody of it. But going private means the private equity guys take over your firm. And I didn't want to do that. I did not think that would be best for our stakeholders. So I kept asking the question day after day after day, what is the win-win-win scenario? What's the best thing for our customers? What's the best thing for our team members? What's the best thing for our suppliers? What's the best thing for our investors? And what's the best thing for the community that we're part of? And day after day, I couldn't figure it out. And one day, I woke up, and it popped in my mind, what about Amazon? Because I'd met Jeff Bezos the year before at a conference, and he and I connected. We got along really well. Jeff loves science fiction and fantasy, and so do I. Jeff's into scuba diving, so am I. He's got a good sense of humor. Well, I like to think I have a good sense of humor. And then we were on a panel together, and he says, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Really like to get together again. I'm going to give you a call. Never heard from him. But I still made a good connection with him. So we contact Amazon, and it turns out they were very, very interested in acquiring a Whole Foods market. So I flew there with a team of guys. Three of my senior executives met with Jeff and three of his. And it was kind of love at first sight. If you can remember when you fall in love, you have what's called, at some point you will have what I call the conversation, where you stay up all night and you talk, and there's a meeting of the souls, and you think you found your soulmate. Well, that's what happened when we talked to Amazon. We talked for like 3 hours about all the things we could do together. They weren't like I thought they would be. These seemed like really smart people, but regular people, regular guys. And I remember when after the meeting, I retired to a restaurant with my 3 executives, and we're looking around, and we were all so impressed with the Amazon team. And we were kind of said, man, we could do some great things together. And then we were all looking at each other, kind of smiling, and I broke the ice, and I said, but do you think they liked us too? They did. They called us up for a second date like 3 days later, flew to Austin, and 6 weeks after that first meeting, we were engaged, signed a merger agreement. I like to joke that actually Whole Foods is my daughter, and I married her off to the richest man in the world. But so, would I rather have stayed independent? And the answer is absolutely. Absolutely. I did not want to sell to Amazon. They were the best alternative that was available to us. And given the circumstances to do over again, I would do the same thing. And let me tell you some stuff that most people don't know. Was that a perfect marriage? No. There are many things about the Amazon culture that don't work for Whole Foods Market. On the other hand, they didn't try to change us. They let us be Whole Foods. And that they're like a powerful gravitational pull that pulls on your culture anyway. And then since I've retired 2.5 years ago, it's changing faster now. But some of the things from that win-win-win for stakeholders, Amazon let us drop prices 4 times. What I told you what we most needed to do, the thing I talked to them that first meeting, we need to lower our prices. It's going to be expensive, but that's what we need to do. Would you let us do that? And they said, absolutely. It cost them hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. But they did it, and Whole Foods' market's far more price competitive than it used to be. Then, within 30 days of the merger, they raised pay. And every hourly employee at Whole Foods got a pay increase. Every hourly employee got a pay increase. That cost them hundreds of millions of more dollars. And then people were worried about our suppliers. Amazon's going to make you drop suppliers. No, just the opposite. Amazon studied all our sales volume, saw how well we were doing with suppliers, and picked a bunch of them up and started selling them at Amazon Fresh and on Amazon.com. What about our nonprofit foundations? Amazon not only didn't cut those out, they gave a bunch of money to them. So they were great. Oh, and the government benefited greatly because so many capital gains taxes were paid in that transaction. So it was a win-win-win transaction. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best alternative available to us. And that's only told you half the story, so you have to go to the book for the rest of it.
Yes, please. Continuing on that win-win-win conversation, you've been, I think, engaged for a long time. Obviously, Milton Friedman is not alive anymore, but you've been engaged in conversations about the real purpose of business and why, while some people think it's just about maximizing profits, shareholder value, you see a bigger purpose. And I really like your analogy that you use. I'm not sure if in this book or in Conscious Capitalism as well, but about how profit is, the analogy that profit is the blood of a business. It's essential for its survival, but it's not the reason for its existence. Can you expand on that a little bit? And also going into these win-win-win relationships, can you maybe talk about as well about the broader value that entrepreneurs and business create for society and the underappreciated role of business and entrepreneurship in advancing human flourishing?
That's like 5 questions. But
yes.
I'll do the best.
We only have 10 more minutes.
I'll do the best I can on it. So, let me ask you a question. If you go to a party and you ask people what the purpose of business is, what would you normally hear? I'm sorry, what? Shareholder value, or to make money. What do you mean, what's the purpose of business? Everybody knows the purpose of business is make money. That's a weird answer. What's the purpose of a doctor? To help, well. That may be, I'm sad to say that might become increasingly true because business has kind of taken over medicine in a way. But the purpose of a doctor is to heal people. Architects design buildings. Engineers construct things. Teachers educate. All of the professions refer back to some type of value creation they're doing in the world, right? That's why they exist. Business is the greatest value creator in the world, but it doesn't exist to make money. It exists to create value for its customers. The customer is the most important stakeholder. No customers, no business, no profits. Profits are something that comes as a result of creating value for other people. That's the higher purpose of business is to create value for customers. And Whole Foods' higher purpose is to nourish people and the planet. As we nourish people, then they trade with the company and we make money. And that makes the whole engine go. So the best analogy, and he's using, and this is not my own analogy, I stole this from Ed Freeman, who's really the founder of stakeholder thinking. And Ed says, look, my body has to produce red blood cells. If I don't produce red blood cells, I'm going to die. But it doesn't follow that because I have to produce red blood cells to exist, that the purpose of my life is to produce red blood cells. No. I have to produce red blood cells, but that's not why I'm alive. That's not what my purpose is. Well, similarly, business must make money or it will die. But that's not why it exists. And we've let the enemies of capitalism define it in its worst terms. And business schools have been complicit in this. And when I debated Milton Friedman, I wasn't arguing that profits aren't important. You know what? And they're so difficult to produce. It's not easy to make money in business. Hey, I'm back in startup mode with my new business, Love Life. It's hard. I'm back in startup mode. Man, God, getting to EBITDA break even, man, that'll be great when we get there. In the meantime, we got a burn rate. I keep forking in more money into this business, you know. Anyhow, purpose matters. And if we want to help protect capitalism in business, we need to talk about purpose. And profits are important. And profits make the world go round. Where do you think all the money comes that we give to nonprofits? And where does government, where do they get their money from? It's coming from the profits of business, ultimately. They're providing the job, creating the jobs. And so the profits are good and they're necessary. It's just a bad narrative to try to defend business always in terms of its profits. We should defend it in terms of the value and the good that we're doing in the world. And in terms of the win-win-win, that is something so extraordinary. I sort of talked about it previously, but it's worth underscoring. Business creates value not only for its customers, it creates value for its employees. It creates value for the suppliers it's trading with. It creates value for the investors that invest in the business if it's profitable. They're creating value for the government. They're creating value for the nonprofits. Business is amazing. It's created, capitalism's creating, and if I was to show you GDP per capita slides, it's blow you away. For like 2,000 years, the GDP per capita did not go up across this planet. And then in the last 250 years, it's gone up 20 times, even though the population's gone up, 10 times greater. It's astounding what business has done when we created economic freedom and let capitalism actually work in this world. In fact, it's the greatest thing that humanity's ever done. The single greatest thing humanity ever did was create capitalism. I can defend that over and over again. I debate socialists all the time, and it's just, the facts are all on my side.
And building on that, we're here with our host from the Breedville Institute for Economic Freedom, which is, how do you think of economic freedom in the broader sense? How was it important to Whole Foods, or how you can expand on that? How is it important to our lives as a whole, that you were starting to comment on that?
Well, no economic freedom, no prosperity, no progress. If you study the history of business or the history of economics, an author that I really like, Deidre McCloskey, who wrote a trilogy of books, which I highly recommend they read, they're fantastic books. She's the one that woke me up to, wow, there really was no economic freedom previous to the Industrial Revolution. The entrepreneurs were completely under the thumb of the aristocracy and the royalty and the clerisy, the priest. They couldn't do anything. They were so regulated. I mean, people were They had to do the same job their fathers did oftentimes. There was no effective way to accumulate capital. If you accumulated it, generally would be stolen from you. There was no banking system to speak of. And the world was just stagnant. And so once we got the genie out of the bottle and the Industrial Revolution began and we started accumulating capital and banks began to be developed, and for a while the intellectuals, with the wealth of nations, that was such an important, and the American Revolution, these were such important events towards liberty and freedom. For the first time in the history of the world, we had economic and personal freedom, and it began to spread around the world, and that's what's lifted humanity literally out of the mud. Considering the fact that if you go back 200 years ago, that's not that long, it's a few generations, 85% of everyone alive on the planet lived on less than $2 a day, 85%. The average lifespan was 30, and only 12% of the population could read. That's just 200 years ago. That's what capitalism has done. That's what liberty and freedom have done. And it's so extraordinary. It's such an important story to be told, and I just don't know why we're not shouting it to the rooftops. And it's always being attacked and criticized because people compare it to something in their minds. It could be so much better. I mean, socialism's been tried 41 times in the last 100 years. 41 countries embraced socialism, 41 failures. Oh, we just haven't done it right yet. The right people haven't been doing it. It's just been these evil people like, Stalin but if we could get the right people, it'd be more just. We could distribute the income in a more economically fair way. We could create utopia. You're going to create another totalitarian nightmare. That's what happens.
Yeah. And yes, please. Just have a few minutes left, and I want to give you a chance to talk about your new venture, Love Life. What it's about? What are you building? What's the purpose of it?
Well, the name of my new company, so you can Google this if you want to get our website. It's called Love. It's Love Life, but it's love.life because that's our URL, love.life. And our first location is in LA, in the Beach Cities area of Los Angeles. Won't surprise you, it's located next to Whole Foods Market's third highest volume store in Southern California. I know where all Whole Foods' best stores are. I know all the sales volumes, or at least I did. Probably my information is gradually getting dated here. But, so I'll tell you a story. Something that happened at Whole Foods has led to doing this. We created a program we called the Total Health Immersion at Whole Foods. We did some research, and we found out 10% of our team members were self-insured for healthcare. 10% of our team members spent 90% of our healthcare dollars. And we were spending over $200 million a year on the healthcare of our team members. And 90% of the people, 10% were spending all the money. So it was like, if we can make those 10% healthier, we could really cut down the healthcare cost. That'd be a win-win because it'd obviously be good for the team members as well. So we created a program we called a Total Health Immersion. And we did it 4 times a year, different parts of the country. It was voluntary. Nobody had to go, but you had to apply for it. And the people that were sickest were the ones that we would let go to it. They'd get first dibs on it, so to speak. It was extraordinary. I saw hundreds of people lose over 100 pounds in less than a year. We reversed type 2 diabetes for hundreds of people. We had over, I don't know, the time I left, it was like 5,000 people gone through the program. And I saw so many people heal themselves quickly. The human body is incredibly resilient. If we stop poisoning it and nourish it, and we teach proper lifestyle habits, it begins to heal quickly. It's quite extraordinary, actually. However, we'd send them back, and they'd go back. If let's say you have a friend who's an alcoholic, you send them into rehab. They're there 90 days. They come back sober. Now, if your friend goes back and is hanging around with the same friends he had before, who like to go to bars, he's not going to stay sober that long, right? Well, people go back and they start eating the same old diet. They eat the standard American diet, and the weight starts to come back on because they had good intentions, but their families and their friends didn't support it. That's really the inspiration for Love Life. Love Life is a one-stop holistic health center. It's unlike, the closest analogy is kind of like the Cooper Clinic, which you have here in Dallas, except ours is nestled in an urban environment that, and so we have, it's an old Best Buy, it's 45,000 square feet. It has a healthy restaurant, healthy food. It's got a state-of-the-art fitness center. It's got yoga studio, it's got Pilates. We have physical therapy, acupuncture, every type of modality. We have all of these biohacks that you can do, from cryotherapy to red light therapy to cold plunges to infrared saunas to pimp machines. There's all kinds of ways people can recover quicker. We have 3 indoor pickleball courts. Pickleball sweeping the nation. I love pickleball. And we also have a medical center. And so the idea is that, you know what's wrong with healthcare in America? About 1 million things. But one thing that stands out about it, when do you get a plumber? Yeah, when your pipes break, right? When do people go see a doctor? When they're sick. What's killing people in America today? What are the major causes of death? Is people getting sick? No, heart disease is number 1. Cancer is number 2. Then you've got stroke, you have autoimmune diseases, you have type 2 diabetes. These diseases develop over decades. When the time you go to get the plumber in, it's too late. It's usually too late. So, Love Life's vision is, we now have the most amazing technologies to test people. We can find out exactly how healthy you are at whatever age you're at. And now we have these incredible wearables like Apple Watches, Oura Rings, continuous glucose monitors. We can do MRIs, DEXA scans. You find out what people are on, and then you work with the doctors and a wellness coach and a whole care team to help you become the healthiest version of yourself. We're all on a health journey. We could all be healthier. And then you just flip the doctor's role. The doctor's job is to keep you from getting those chronic diseases. And if you have them, guess what? Most of them can be reversed. Stage 4 cancer, that's a little tougher, and because it's been developing for so long. But most of the rest of heart disease is reversible. If you had a stroke, well, you don't have to have a second one. These are things that you can do to prevent these things. If you're type 2 diabetic, I saw hundreds of people reverse that in just 30 days. So that's the new paradigm that we call our subtitle is The New Future of Health. And I want to open these all over America and eventually the world. Next one's going to be in Austin because I live in Austin. Why did you go to LA first? 2 reasons. Couldn't find a location in Austin and I was too impatient. And I thought, you know what? If this idea won't work in Los Angeles, it won't work. There's no place in America that's people are trying to be thin, look good, be healthy. All the crazy ideas start first in LA for the most part, or the Bay Area. So, but we're only 6 months open, but it's doing really well. It's growing rapidly, and we're looking for our location in Austin. And yes, we will come to Dallas. It'll be one of our first markets.
Excellent. Well, we're running out of time, so we'll have a Q&A. There's a microphone here if you want to come and ask a question. I will have a few minutes for that. I'll close first as people line up with one last question. In your book, you discuss your love of the Lord of the Rings series for the books, and I imagine hopefully the movies as well, which you loved. Is there a specific part of the Lord of the Rings story that you identify with specifically, or something that you like about it more?
Well, I mean, what I love about the Lord of the Rings, and I mean, it's a hero's journey, right? Frodo just wants to hang out in his little hobbit den and eat food and, enjoy life. But he's called to this hero's journey, so he gets up and he begins his adventure. And I identify with that. That's the part I identify with. I also identify with the ring of power. The ring of power, there's 3 things that corrupt people. People want love. We want purpose and love. Those are the two most important things. And we think we'll get those through money, wealth, fame, and power. But those 3 things don't give you love and they don't give you purpose. They're bad substitutes for it, and they're highly addicting. Most people cannot wear the ring of power without being corrupted by it. So that's one of the themes that I also really liked in those books.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We'll start our first question, please.
Hi, thank you so much. Really enjoyed your talk. With all of the experience you've had, what's been the biggest surprise that you've encountered and, that you learned something from in your journey?
What's the biggest surprise? I mean, I've learned a lot. I'll tell you, my whole book is it's a chronicle of all the big mistakes I've made in life. I mean, in some ways, your biggest surprises are the things that you were pretty sure were going to work and they didn't work. Those are always a surprise. But one of the things there were four coup attempts to take me out in my 44-year career at Whole Foods. 4 times I was betrayed more than once by people I loved and trusted. Those are big surprises. When the ring of power, if you want to wear it, and if they have to betray somebody to do it, so be it. Those were terribly unhappy surprises for me. But I didn't learn the lesson that many people learn, which is not to trust people. I still believe you have to trust people, because if you don't trust people, trust and love, they're very close together. So, but in being open and vulnerable, you do open the possibility of betrayal, and I guess I'm okay with that. At the end of the day, I haven't stopped trusting people. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
yeah, that's.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming and speaking. There's sort of a new concept in the business world, which is these impact organizations. And in one of my classes here at SMU, we've discussed,
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, actually, I was about to ask you. Because it really doesn't.
I know
really
what
have
they
a
intend it to mean. They mean it has a social impact. Here's the thing. Rightly understood, business is always having a social impact. It's creating value for customers. Mm-hmm. It's providing jobs. It's providing, and the jobs ripple out because it's trading with suppliers and they're creating jobs too. And then it's providing profits that make the economy go around. Is that not impactful? Right? It's always impactful. But business should be socially responsible. But that's been misunderstood in the sense that if the community that we're part of is important, and business has a responsibility to be a good citizen in their communities, just like anybody else would be a good citizen in the community. And business should be philanthropic, and you are spending the money that's owned by the shareholders. So I believe that your philanthropy should also create win-win-wins for the business, create goodwill in the community, create positive publicity. The business should be winning as well. So there's a hierarchy of stakeholders. The most important, and this is my own hierarchy, that people can differ on this one. The customer's most important. No customers, no business, end of story. The investors are the next most important. They invested to get a return on their capital. That's very important that they do that. Third is the team members, employees, because they're the ones that create value for the customers, so they are important. Then you got suppliers, and so then the community's next. You can't put the community ahead of the rest of them, or you won't produce anything for the community. You'll wreck your business, and then there's not going to be anything left over for the community either. So social responsibility matters. Social impact is important. But you should not compromise your purpose or your mission or those other stakeholders chasing after. And what oftentimes happens is the CEO's doing it so that they're doing it to mollify critics or to mollify their own guilt or make themselves look better in their friends' eyes. I mean, there's lots of different motivations for it. But yes, social responsibility matters. And so you seek the win-win-win, always. What's good for the customer, what's good for all of the stakeholders, including the community.
Thank you for your candor.
Hi, Carol Horton. I'm an executive MBA student here as well as a business owner, and I totally agree with being a business owner.
You're a
It's
busy
great.
person. I'm glad you came out tonight.
Yeah. But my question is more on a personal level. I have 3 kids. My oldest is a son.
Oh my
who's-
gosh,
I
even
know.
busier than I thought.
My son is going to be 24 this year
Congrats.
and is kind of.
Look like you're heading when you're like 10 years old.
Well, yeah. He is drifting a little bit. So when I was reading your book, you're speaking about your mom and her, that story about her not supporting what you were doing. And so as a mother, I'm just asking, what kind of advice would you give me to help my son who is kind of drifting? What would you have liked to had your mom tell you?
First of all, that's a way too complicated question. I mean, simply because, every situation is going to be uniquely different. I don't know your son, so is your son still living at home?
No.
That's already a good thing, right there. Is he supporting himself?
Not really.
Well, maybe you should make him support himself.
Yeah.
That's my first piece of advice. I know, I'm in the generation, my parents didn't give me an allowance. They didn't give me anything.
Oh, I'm not. No.
Okay, so,
Someone else
but
did.
if you check most entrepreneurs' history, I was, as soon as I could go to work, I went to work so that I could earn money, so that I could get the things that would be my money. And it's like, so I could buy records initially, eventually buy a car, could take girls out on dates. It was my money, and I had to work for it.
Yeah.
That changes people. If you have to go actually pay for your schooling and pay for your own way in life, you get a healthy respect for work. And, that gives you purpose. And, but I don't know all the details of your son's situation. I know the Zoom generation the Zoomers are pretty confused generation. And I think partly it's because they've been fed a whole bunch of bullshit. Failure of our schools in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I'm out of not giving, I don't really want to give parents advice because, I'm not qualified.
Now, is that for advice that, what would you have wanted your mom to tell you instead of?
Well, in my book, I tell the story of my mother on her deathbed. The last time I ever saw my mother, she thought I was a failure. Because, as she said, my mom, the last time I saw her 3 weeks before she died, she'd already had a stroke. She's in her bed, and she said, and I described this in the book. She said, John, your father and I gave you a fine mind. I saw all your IQ tests. I've seen your aptitude test. You could have been anything you wanted to be in life. You could have been a doctor. You could have been a lawyer. And you're a grocer. I want you to promise me that you will go back and finish school and make something of yourself. I wish I'd lied. I wish I'd said, absolutely, I'm going to go back and get a degree. I'm going to make you really proud of me. Instead, in my youthful pride, because it's a long time ago now, I said, Mom, I'm not going to go back to school. I'm going to build Whole Foods in this great company. I'm going to get an honorary degree someday. You'll see some university will give me an honorary degree. That happened, by the way. So, but she died disappointed in me, thinking I was kind of like a failure in life. So, but that was highly manipulative too. On her deathbed, saying she was going to die pretty soon. And wouldn't I do it for her dying? For her, she was, I thought, Anyway, we'll call that a minor regret. If I could, that's a slight do-over. Just because today, in a more mature version of myself, I'd be a little bit less wrapped up in my own integrity, and giving comfort to an old dying woman. That'd be a compassionate thing to do. So we'll call that a minor regret. If I see her after I pass on, I'll do some apologies at that time.
Time for 2 final questions.
So my name is Lok Tung Hun, and I think you just recently answered my questions, but I just want to add on, what are the reasons, you keep rely on in the moment, you want to overcome challenges, you don't want to give up. What are the reasons? And do you believe you are going to success before you start? everything's. That's all. Thank you.
Successful entrepreneurs, they don't quit. They have resilience. You're going to have a lot of setbacks. You always can make up excuses to quit. But instead, you have to, one of the things I admired many things about Elon Musk. But did you know one of the things they like to have happen at SpaceX? Failure. They liked when their rockets blow up. They celebrate the failures. They celebrate the blow-ups. Why? Because they're always testing. You know, how much weight, how thin can we make this? And then it's, we can't make it that thin. And it just blew up. and so failures are your greatest teachers in life. They really are. I'll leave you with this final thought. One of the things that media always asks me is, if you could go back and tell your younger self anything, what would you tell your younger self? And I always give 3 answers to that question. The first one's a joke. The first 2 are jokes. I say, it wouldn't matter. If I went back to my younger self, he'd say, old man, get out of here. I'm not going to listen to you. And that's probably true. And the second thing I would say, listen to me, John. Under no circumstances, do not get involved with that woman. She's going to make your life miserable. But I think that the best answer and the true answer is I wouldn't tell him anything. And the reason why is because my life has worked out wonderfully well. I'm very happy with my life. If I died today, I've had a good life. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made those mistakes. The mistakes is how I learned and grew. So failure can be your friend. And you cannot let that stop you. You have to always ask, what is this trying to teach me? Learn the lesson, move on, keep moving forward. And if you fail, don't stop. Start a new business. You'll do better the second time. And if you're not willing to do that, don't start a business at all, because you're going to have a lot of setbacks. And the hero's journey is one of all the hero's journey. They always have a lot of failures. Their mentors die off. They're on their own. They go through the hard times. There's the floods that you have to overcome. There's the betrayals, the coups. They're all there. And so, yeah, but what a fun, satisfying life it can be if you do that. If you follow your heart, do what your heart calls you to do, and it's an adventure. You know, one other final thing I'll say, I oftentimes have young people come up to me and say, I want to be like you. I want to do it, you know, and I always say, hey, I'll trade you. What do you mean you'll trade me? I said, you can have all my wealth, all my success. You can be me. I'll be you. And I say, why would you want to do that? And I say, are you kidding? You've got your whole life in front of you. You've got a life of adventure ahead of you. I'd trade that in a second, right? Who wouldn't do that that's had a good life? Because life's amazing. Love life. That's not an accident. The first company was called Safer Way, and this is called Love Life. I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you.